Welcome to Longevity by Design, a podcast designed to give individuals access to the leading scientific information in the field of longevity. The ability to add years to your life and life to your years needs no opinion. Join us as we ask science to take the wheel. In each episode, Dr. Gil Blander joins a co-host and an industry expert in the field of longevity, shining a light and getting the answers to the key question: how can we live a longer, healthier life?
Hello, I'm Dr. Gil Blander. Welcome to Longevity by Design, How to Live Longer, Healthier Life. We are produced by Inside Tracker, your science-based guide to optimize your body from the inside out. Our guest today is Dr. Evelyne Bischof. Dr. Bischof is the Chief Physician Associate of Internal Medicine at the University Hospital in Shanghai. She is also a concierge longevity physician for executive longevity patients. Her focus is oncology and longevity medicine, artificial intelligence, and digital health, precision medicine, biogerontology, and oncology. In addition to publishing over 80 peer-reviewed papers, she also a frequent speaker at scientific and medicine conferences in Asia and Europe. Dr. Bischof sits in several scientific advisory boards of biotech and longevity hubs. Thank you for being our guest today,
Thank you
Evelyne.
so much, Gil, for having me. Thank you so much for everybody on the team for having me on the show. It's a great pleasure and honor.
Yeah, so Evelyne, I met you a few weeks ago in Europe, and we just spoke about flying from Europe and all of that, and it's a nightmare. Actually, I had the same nightmare when I flew from Copenhagen to Boston. My flight was delayed, and I had to spend another night in Copenhagen, which is not a bad place to stay, but it wasn't exciting. So we know that definitely the world is currently not friendly for traveling around. And usually at Longevity by Design, we like to ask our guests and start by asking what brought you to become a scientist? What brought you to be a physician? What is your early age reason for you to become a
Oh, what a great
scientist and a
question.
physician?
I don't remember when I was asked this question last time, but I'm very happy to share. It's quite straightforward. When I was a child, I was very much impressed by genetic engineering. And my clear goal was always that I will be a genetic engineer and I will be working in the, perhaps also in somehow genetics in the medical field. Well, when I finished my high school, I then heard recommendation or an advice from my teacher that, that was one of the best advice that I have gotten in my life, which was go study medicine. Go study medicine, and then you can always decide if you're going to go to the lab or you're going to do something else. Just open the bigger door for yourself, and then you will choose which room you want to be in. And when I was studying in the first 2 years, in the first 4 semesters, I was very, very lucky to be allowed by Professor Kai Simons at the Max Planck Institute of Molecular Biology and Genetics, that was just right next door to my medical school, to be a medical student there. And I ended up doing my medical thesis there. And I fell in love with the lab, with basic science. I worked a lot later on also with people there on exosomes, actually. I come from that field in neurodegeneration. But at some point of time, well, later on in my studies, I really fell in the biggest love with the clinic, so working with the patients. And so therefore, I'm a full-time clinician. This is what I love to do. And I'm in the sick care and right now also in longevity, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But still, whenever I can, I maintain some basic level of the basic research, specifically on biomarkers, predictive and prognostic biomarkers, mostly in oncology. Yeah.
Excellent. And you raised the point, longevity clinics, which is fascinating to me. And we discussed it a lot when we met a few weeks ago. And actually, we spent a few sessions about that. So maybe you can give some background for our audience. What are longevity clinics? What does it mean? What are the
Right. So maybe
basics
let's
about that?
tell the audience also what we did in Copenhagen so that there is a big clarity about that. So Yeah,
Okay,
we were
sure.
at the conference, the largest longevity conference in the world called ARDD. And it was the 9th edition. Next year is the 10th one. And for the past 2 years, the very first day actually of the conference is called Longevity Medicine Workshop, or now relabeled to Longevity Medicine Day, where we have MDs and PhDs and physicians talking about longevity and longevity medicine specifically. However, the entire conference is, of course, based around longevity, science, translation, investments, and so on. So this is where we were. But myself as a clinician, I do work in a university hospitals in the ICU, internal medicine, but also as a longevity concierge physician. So I do have my longevity patients. I believe it's important to say that longevity is a very nascent field. So we are still working probably on the definition of longevity itself. So it's very hard to say what is a, credible longevity clinic in that sense. But there are efforts. So Human Longevity, HLI, is one example of a clinic that is implementing longevity definitely into, diagnosing the patient and then also now leading the patient. But everything there was very much evidence-based and grounded in the full body MRI and the genetics. Other centers, longevity centers and stuff like that, are also now giving the opportunity to people to comprehensively at one spot, for example, run various biological clocks and do some extended diagnostics that they could probably not get in a normal healthcare setting. But what I'm mostly excited about is actually the creation of longevity. I like to call them longevity departments, but I don't think it will be it will be a mainstream name of that. So let's say longevity clinic, but affiliated to university hospitals, for example, to universities or to other bodies that will really pronounce the direct translation, the direct contact of science and clinic. So really being physically with the patient and having the physicians that are being educated to practice longevity medicine, and at the same time help us to grow, hopefully also as a global network, to create the evidence base, to create more puzzles that we can bring together to create also credible, validated guidelines. And for this, for example, we created the new medical society. We called it Healthy Longevity Medical Society. And that medical society is specifically created for MDs primarily, for healthcare professionals, of course, targeting primarily MDs, because this is the group that is so extremely important. And so far, there was no global society that would help them to work together, to be educated, and at the same time develop guidelines and develop protocols, validate biomarkers that are needed for that, and ultimately also know with whom and how to work. So of course the society will be extremely interdisciplinary and have connections to other people from the longevity arena and ecosystem, AI scientists, industry and so on, labs. So that's, those are the examples of where we are transiting from longevity clinic being maybe some small type of a practice of one person practice at the moment to really something very big, bringing curriculum of longevity medicine into the med schools, bringing universities and opening longevity centers at the universities like in Singapore or now also in Israel at Shiba. And yeah, so those developments are just so extremely exciting.
Excellent. And for our audience that are not aware so much about longevity clinics, so let's assume that I'm as a patient or client, whatever you want to call it, come to a longevity clinic or meet with a longevity physician. Can you explain what is the difference between the experience of a patient going to his normal yearly assessment at a normal clinic versus longevity clinic? What are the difference things that he will experience in
Right,
the
right.
longevity
So it's a
clinic?
very good question, right? Optimally, such a longevity place, longevity department or clinic where we actually have longevity physicians working with the patient. I like to, and I'm very German about that. I like to structure things. And I think if in medicine, we always have the diagnostics and we have the therapies. Yeah, diagnostics and interventions, let's say like that. And the diagnostic part of longevity medicine is now fairly well developed, of course, boomingly developing further. But this diagnostic part will be the unique edge of the longevity clinics, going from all the measurements of monitorings, from continuous to yearly monitorings 24/7. Biological age, I think, is the ultimate guidance at the end of the day for the physician. Now, we can talk long time about which part of the biological age, like we know that every organ, every system is aging differently at a different speed and influencing each other. It's all intersected. So I think we will see a variety of new validated biological aging clocks coming up at some point of time. Perhaps there will be also a good algorithm to measure the predictions of biological age speed or rate in the organism. There will be, of course, radiological data that will be gathered, surely AI algorithm enforced imaging such as whole body MRI, just as an example. Maybe it will be a different type because MRI, we are still learning. And other diagnostics that perhaps in the healthcare system we do not do or do not see, or we do not do them in people who are per se healthy. It means they do not have an acute or chronic apparent disease. We would not do that. And in a preventive setting, they might or might not get it. But surely in a preventive center, I don't know any preventive center that is regularly, routinely implementing biological aging clocks, for example, in the practice. And for a longevity physician like me, if I cannot bring a person to a better biological age or to an optimal biological age for that person at that specific point of time, calculated with a credible clock, then it's a failure, right? So I think that's the biggest difference. But at this point, I also would like to mention, I think at the same time, and that's my big concern, or what I would love to see, and we are working on, and it's happening, is that some of the elements of longevity medicine will also be brought to the so-called typical, you said normal, sick care. Let me give you an example. So in Switzerland, for example, in Basel University Hospital, we are now in the oncology department implementing biological aging clocks and some other longevity specific diagnostics like NLP based, speech recording, saliva testings, in order to, number one, of course, learn more how to better triage the patients for a specific therapy when they have cancer, and also how to guide them and follow them up after their therapy, to optimize their biological age, because every patient that has cancer is aging faster biologically, no matter which type of therapy they got. So as we see elements of so-called normal medicine, the medicine of standard as we know it in the longevity medicine, I think we are also seeing the trend vice versa. And that's, at some point of time when the decision of which therapy and which guideline to follow for a specific patient will be done not by the chronological age, but by the biological age as just one of many, many components, that will be, I think, a big success of medicine in general.
Excellent. That was a very good explanation. And now we understand what is the success of longevity medicine practice. My next question is about the interventions. So we know that in the longevity field, we are talking about rapamycin and metformin and NAD analogs and all of that. So a patient that coming to longevity medicine should expect to receive those intervention, or the intervention will be more like the general and the intervention that usually received by your primary care physician?
Well, it's a great question, right? And I would hope, and I think I'm not the only one that is aiming for this to happen, that not only internal medicine physicians, for example, and geriatricians will be very passionate about the field, knowledgeable then, will have the access to good education and to validated protocols, but also especially primary care physicians, right? Now, again, we don't have them in all the countries. I live in China. There is no such a concept of a primary care physician, but there are other ones, so comparable. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. That's where we will see, if we work collaboratively, that also those physicians that will be leading the patients for a longer time, because it's all about longitudinal data, that they will also be the ones to then give the therapies. Now, what this will be specifically, I wouldn't put myself in a position to say it will be rapamycin or it will be some other thing. But yes, I would say, hopefully, I hope very much for all the trials that are ongoing, for senolytics, for geroprotectors, for AI-based developed drugs, for the repurposed drugs, and for other interventions, and not only pharmacological ones, right? That their trials will work, that they will show safe benefits, right? So also the toxic side, we should be very much aware of it, and that they will be applicable to people and hopefully then for everyone, accessible for everyone. So for this, of course, we need involvement from now on already from insurance companies and other bodies that are supporting the field, right? Foundations, etc., and public health bodies, authorities.
Interesting. And related to the age of average patient, so is it only for the elderly, someone in his 60s, 70s, 80s, and hopefully 150? Or is it also for younger audience that strive to live longer, but they are
Of
still young?
course, it should be for everyone. It's for everyone a little different, right? Because I can give an example from what I do. My patients are ranging in their age from probably something mid-20s to right now, my oldest patient is 80, and I'm close to taking a patient that is 86. And of course, it's a different approach, yeah. But the goal is the same. Everybody wants to live healthier. It's not about living longer that much, at least not for me. It's about extension of the health span. Actually, we came up with the definition. Now, we don't want to claim that we are the one to define the field, but somehow someone has to. And we took upon ourselves this task, and we will try to also argumentate it and send for a peer review. The Executive Committee of the Healthy Longevity Medicine Society defined the field of healthy longevity as extension of the health span and optimization of the health span across the lifespan. And this pretty much means that if the lifespan will then be extended in good health, great. Extension of lifespan without extension of health span makes that's already done. It's there. This is why we have the silver tsunami. That's why we have huge number of percentage of population that is elderly. So it is for every group age. I think at some point of time we will even see longevity medicine applied to even much younger ages. Yeah, as we go and as we learn, I think it will get there as well, in the pediatric field as well. But at the very beginning, definitely not only for elderly, or those who feel elderly, but for the younger ones that feel healthy and want to extend and optimize their performance.
Yeah, and I fully agree with you that we are starting to age when we are sexually mature. So you can treat it as early as possible. And it's like saving for your retirement. If you save early, you have more money. If you save late, you have less money. It's exactly the same. And you should try and work on it as early as possible. My next point or question is about artificial intelligence or AI. So it's a buzzword. A lot of people are using it, and I've seen a lot of talking about that, but not a lot of real use of AI. And I know that you are very passionate about it, and you are using AI in your practice. So, can you give us an example of how AI is working
In
in
longevity
longevity clinics?
practice, yes. So I think AI is now pretty much everywhere, also in the sick care. Like all the AI algorithms, even in our oncological practice today, are pretty much standard in most of the places I worked in. But in terms of longevity medicine, AI plays an even bigger role, because I think in longevity medicine, we see in the diagnostic part and the longitudinal development in general, the highest level of very heterogeneous, extremely multimodal data that have to be brought together, and an objective function. So let's say a question that a person has as a physician. For example, what is the biological age of a patient? What is the optimal biological age of this patient at this point of time? Which parameters are the most important? How to influence them to which level so that we can achieve the best biological age and so on. That is only possible right now with the combination of human intelligence and artificial intelligence. I'm not one of those people who shift everything to the AI, still not autonomous in a way in medicine. I don't think so. It's a combination. It's a help. It's a tool that is almost mandatory in order to really make sense from this a huge amount of data. Right? You have to imagine you have everything from the genetics, from the whole omics, through the entire physiological testings, through some imaging testings, then through some liquid biopsies, then through some monitoring that is like 24/7, and then also all the epigenetic factors, and then also the cerebral ones, both on the neuro, psychological, and mental part. So we need AI to bring it all together. Yeah. So AI algorithms to
Yeah. So what you are saying is basically AI is a tool for the physician to crunch a lot of data and make sense of. But at the end of the day, the physician is the one that make the decision and decide how to treat or if to treat, which makes a lot of sense. You also mentioned genetics, and it's very interesting to know and understand how genetic play in longevity or longevity medicine. What are the genetics tools or tests that you are doing, and what are the
right.
interpretation
So
of them?
genetics is a very interesting part, both genetics in the way people associate it with pathological signs or mutations. So the very typical one is APOE4 mutation or a variant expression that will give a high risk for Alzheimer's. So there's really some very, very typical gene or very, very typical mutation that is disease related. This we already have, and that's also practiced in the sick care, like in hematology, oncology, number one thing that we do. But in terms of longevity, there is a little bit of a different approach. Besides of that, on top of that, what I just mentioned, the pathology related genetical testing, we also do quite a lot of polymorphic risk scores, right? So based on what we are learning now around all the SNPs and genes that the signatures that we have, and that's a constant learning. We know which genes, number one, are, for example, related to specific diseases, so we can calculate a score. Then how they interrelate with each other, that's another score. And last but not least, the pharmacogenetics is very helpful in daily life, right? So just to know if a specific drug or a target of a substance family is working for a patient or not is of course a door opener, and still very nascent field, in my opinion, as well. There are great publications and books and everything, but I guess we will come to a point where genetic signature will actually determine the way we are treating the patient, and there will be new substances created then specifically for that. So we're moving really towards more and more and more individual practice.
Yeah, and I think that your example about pharma genetics is a very good one, because I don't think, I don't know any physician that is not ahead of the curve like you, that will look at that and come and say, hey, this drug is not good for you because you have those polymorphisms. So that, and it's definitely very important because you can get adverse effect from that. So I applaud you
I
on
had great
doing that,
peers.
which
There are
is
many doctors who
really
do that.
ahead of the curve.
Yes, luckily, but we need more, of course. Yeah.
Okay, we need more for sure. And so before, earlier in our discussion, you mentioned Healthspan, and I think that that's a term that I would like to spend a bit on that, because everyone saying, okay, longevity, that's mean the time between I was born to the time that I will die. But Healthspan means something different, and I would like you
Oh,
to define it if
I
you can.
wish. I wish I could give a definition. I could probably give my own personal view and a little bit of a taste, but let's say we are working on it. We are trying to define it and to publish it as a next step after we have defined longevity medicine. Actually, I just learned during the travels and conferences that the initial person that that used it and put it into place was actually Dr. Felipe Sierra. And he mentioned that it would be very nice to have a fixed definition of health span. I think what we are now understanding under this word is that these are the years of life that are lived in good health. And if we are now choosing the definition by the WHO of what health is, so the state of well-being, both mentally and physically, rather than only the absence of diseases, or we choose another definition of health, for example, having some diseases, but still having a fantastic quality of life, right? So it's very different for everyone. I guess here there is a debate, but definitely this span of life, those years that are lived with subjectively and objectively good health. And for me personally, that also means performance, good or even optimal performance, right, of a specific person. And a longevity physician will always look at, okay, this is your performance now. If it's good, that's great. Can we optimize it? Can we make it better? Yes, great. What do we want to do it? The patient needs to want it. If yes, then we work together towards that as well.
Yeah. And I read an article from Matt Camberline, which was a guest here a few episodes ago, and he wrote a full paper, a full review or opinion paper about what is health span. So that means how important it is and how I agree with you. It's everyone can define it differently. One disease is already that you are sick, or if you have a minor disease. So it's not well defined, as you said, but I think that for me, the definition is the time from birth to the time that you cannot perform what you can perform as a normal human being or be as good as you can. But it's definitely not, it's not an easy term to define. And I agree that we need in the field to come with a definition that everyone agree with, because then it will be easier to make an experiment and come and say, hey, this drug allow you to have a health span of that, and the other drug is not. Without that, it will be very hard to compare experiment. I would like now to start talking about one of, I think, your favorite subject, which are the aging clocks. And specifically, I would like to know which kind of clocks are you using in your practice? I know that there are a lot of clocks right now, epigenetic clock and the proteomics and the blood biomarker clock and expression clocks and the behavioral clocks. So what are you using in your practice and why?
Yeah, so biological aging clocks are a very useful tool for any longevity physician, and I'm using a variety of those that are available. I very much like the blood-based aging clocks because I can relatively frequently track the changes if I'm doing some sort of interventions, the lifestyle or otherwise with my patients. And it's of course always useful to have another set of clocks, right? So also using the photo age clock and also using some of the physiological aging clocks. It's very nice to have also the epigenetic aging clocks, right? They're very nice, very good. Also like now the brain type of clock, right? So what is the brain age based on quantifications? So yeah, a variety of tools. And I think, I think, I'm so excited to see more of those clocks coming. So the cardio clock and the microbiome clock, so many that are now in the pipeline, and I just can't wait, right? But I would love to later on, of course, now we are talking probably a few years, to also have a good comparison and a good evidence base in the clinic on, how we can best make use of them and for which patient groups, for which biological aging groups, and so on.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with you about the blood-based clocks, because I think that what's nice about them, and that's actually why we are using the blood-based clock at Inso Tracker, is you can have a see action reaction, and also you can easily find the intervention to feed them. While when you look at epigenetic clock, it's very hard to understand, okay, what does it mean and how can I intervene and change them? Maybe in the future, but today we are not there. So I think that it's 100% agree with you on that. I would like to ask now, how good is the accuracy of those clocks? How well are they predicting the age of a specific
so
patient?
different clocks have different accuracy, and I, of course, try to use, or I use those clocks that are well published. where I kind of understand what is the mean deviation. So most of the clocks right now that are available are very precise. So one can trust them. And of course, it's also all about the trends and how comparable the data set for the calculation that has been used is being applied. But for example, the blood aging clocks based on the deep learning technologies, deep neuronal networks, they're fairly very precise. So the means there are like -3, -5. And in the practice, it means usually that when I see that somebody's biological age is higher than the chronological age, usually that means that there is something that is quite, let's say, not pathologic, but there is quite a room of immediate action necessity. And but it also, I think at this point, it's important to mention to restore the biological age of the optimal performance does not mean that we have to reverse the biological age on the clock as much as possible. It's not about the quantity here. It's about where is the optimal biological age at that point of time for this specific patient, right? So it's important that the biological age clock will also tell me, okay, so this is the bio age now, but what is the optimal one and how do I get there, right? So that's also very important. Not only the status quo, but where is the optimum?
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't make sense for someone that is 80 to strive to have a biological age of 20. I'm fully agree with you, and I've seen a lot of Instant Tracker customer coming to me and say, "Hey, I'm 75, and my inner age, we call it inner age, the clock is 50. I want to be 25. Can I be like that?" And I'm saying, "No, you can't. You are already 75." So that's an excellent point, and it's very important for our audience to know. You mentioned a lot about blood clots and so on. So what is, in your opinion, the most important biomarkers in the blood clots for healthy aging? If a user want to pay attention to a few blood biomarkers, what are they?
It's hard to answer because every algorithm will use a different set. And for example, the clocks that I'm using, they have at the moment optimally 45 parameters, and their weighting in the algorithm is different. But when we go back to the Horvath, great Stephen Horvath's first clocks in 2013, there we see the basic parameters that still play the most important role, like albumin and glucose and BUN and so on. But right, but it's not recommendable, again, to focus only on a very few selected ones, or just to track one parameter over the span and base it on that one, such as cholesterol, for example. That's not the idea here, right? That a patient or a physician can do that themselves. It's really the integration of different parameters and to know what is the scalability of each of them in the algorithm.
So you're saying it's an holistic way to look at it. And I would add also that it depends on the person, because if you have like a sort of, that's where I think the genetics coming. If you have a high risk for higher genetic risk to have cardiovascular disease, then look at the markers that related to that. If you have a high risk for diabetes, maybe you should look at a bit of different markers. So yeah, I understand and I agree with you. So today in our world, people like us or people that listening to our podcast using a lot of way to track themselves. So you can see, I have I have Fitbit, I have Apple Watch, I have Oura Ring, and I know some people are even more crazier than me. And so they basically, we are tracking our sleep, tracking our exercise, tracking our resting heart rate, tracking our VO2 max. What is, in your opinion, in those physiological markers, which of them is the one that, or the two that you will recommend our listener to pay
Track as
attention
much
to?
as you can. That's definitely my first advice. And the same like for the aging clocks or the parameters to track, like which you mentioned there, if there is a high risk score for somebody in terms of other, let's say, anamnesis, right? There's, by the way, also biological anamnestic clock. But it doesn't mean that we should only focus on that arena or on that specific system. The opposite, we should definitely aim for as many parameters to be fueled into an aging clock as possible, smartly, of course, in terms of an proper AI algorithm that's validated and so on. But in terms of physiological trackers, well, if I could recommend the basics of the basics that one can track and should track if they are, curious about themselves and get the feedback is, well, I love CGM, right? So glucose monitoring, at least for a specific period of time, just to know, is there a hypoglycemia in the night at the end of the day? Do I have a response to some specific foods that I didn't know about? Am I constantly over a specific limit, right? Or like over 6 through the day? Why is that? If somebody is implementing intermittent fasting, even unknowingly, there are people like this who I always envy very much, then how well does it go for them? And then, track the vital signs. I track my patients 24/7 on blood pressure and blood pulse, heart rate variability, and oxygen. So this is all tracked continuously by band. For the night, I do like to use sleep apnea trackers, right, with the blood pulse and then calculate the algorithm. So sleep parameters in that sense, rather than just a sleeping score type of quality score or REM phases. I mean, that's good to know. It's very valuable. But if one can do more, that's always even better. And I have patients and know people that have even more devices than you on themselves. And they say the biggest problem right now in this field is that we do not have enough limbs. So put them on. So,
Maybe we need to reverse engineer ourselves and have 11 or 12 fingers that will allow us to have more, more oral rings or so. I just want to, a note that I want to add is that whoever is interested about CGM, which is a continuous glucose monitoring, we had an episode a couple of weeks ago about dedicated to continuous glucose monitoring. So you are more than welcome to listen to that. And I would like to continue and ask you, and maybe because I know you in the last months and we spoke a few times, and every time that we spoke, you have been maybe in different continent or at least a different country. So you are traveling around the world and seeing, basically you have a very good view of what's happening around the world about longevity medicine. Is there an area in the world that is more advanced in longevity medicine than other? And if there is, why is it that a certain area in the world is more
Good
advanced?
question. I think so. I'm now just really lucky that during my first time travels after 3 years after COVID, I am traveling to various conferences, and it's so nice to see so many events happening on longevity in various countries and continents. I think we see different developments and different speeds in that areas in different countries. So let me give you an example. We see great, of course, America has great centers for longevity research and fantastic experts who are also partially here on the show, right? So we have great things going there, randomized controlled trials that are being started, intersecting with the field or in the field. And also not only in the human longevity, right? Also in the pet longevity. So you mentioned Matt, who is, phenomenal. And me as an animal lover, I'm looking towards for good results there, egoistically, but also, of course, then later on looking at the translation back and forth with the humans. I think China is, of course, a very good example of where digitalization and AI plays a big role. And this comes together with the fact that the maturity of society towards AI there is, of course, extremely developed already, right? It's a little bit of a different world. Pretty much everything is digital. And so that's why it's very natural for everybody just to collect their data. It's not something unusual. I think we see, of course, Singapore being a great scientific center there, in various fields of longevity, science, and medicine translation. Israel, of course, with a lot of startups that are then now being also put into the practice, and the first academic longevity clinical center here being built up. And of course, Europe and Africa also have their own type of developments because there are just so many specifics that have to be taken into account. I have worked also in many healthcare systems, in America, in China, in Europe, in Australia. And everybody's a bit different. The approach towards the patients are also different, and the policies are different. So I think we see great successes in some maybe smaller areas and on different continents. And that's why, this type of collaborative work should be enforced. And I'm going to quote here somebody that's not coming from me. It's from Dr. Mahmoud Khan. He mentioned in his talks that in longevity we need collaboration, coordination, and leadership. But the point of coordination and collaboration is something that I think is just so extremely crucial, so that we can really advance together and bring the great successes and the specifics from all the different geopolitical areas together.
Yeah. And just a note, Mahmoud Khan is leading a very big fund that invests in aging. They announced that they will invest around $1 billion a year in aging research, and this fund coming from Saudi Arabia, which is not the place that I was assumed that it will come, but it's great. So I think that another example that the longevity movement is a multinational, and it's not only the US. Our majority of our audience is in the US, and I think that's good for them to understand. It's all over. It's not only the US, and there is a lot of excitement about it. So that's bring me to my next question: is if you had a magic wand and you could move 10 years ahead, and now we are in 2032, what will be, in your opinion, let's say, the ratio between longevity clinics versus normal clinics? It will be 100% longevity clinics, or we'll still have, 99% normal clinics and only 1% longevity
If you
clinics?
ask me about my dream, I would say we will have a longevity department in every hospital. That would be, for me personally, something that I would love to see. But again, I think it's not bad to have also a different type of structure where we have longevity clinics and hospitals, so the sick care and the healthcare, collaboratively working together. But as I mentioned at the very beginning, I hope that the longevity medicine interventions will find place in the healthcare system as we know it now. So also the physicians in various fields, and again, longevity medicine is really a home for so many disciplines, right? It's everything. It's endocrinology, psychiatry, it's cardio, it's pretty much everything. And that's why, yeah, and I hope we will not even see a dichotomy here that 50-50 or something between longevity and normal. We will see it as a unity. That would be something that I would like to see in 2032. That would be a reality. I don't know. That depends on our leaders, how they will collaborate and coordinate us.
Yeah, I agree. But our job, yours, Evelyne, and myself, is to be a dreamers and to try to push to there. So I like your vision. It's a very positive vision. And it might not be happening in 2032, but even if in 2040 it will be like that, that's good. That's okay. It's sometimes take longer. That's not a bad dream. So I would like to finish with a question that we're asking every guest in the podcast. And that's about a tip or a trick that you have about improving longevity. What do you do, or what do you recommend for your patient? What is the most important intervention that you recommend for them to live better longer?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think the most important
I know.
one is different for everyone. And I think that's the most important advice is find a good physician and that can already guide you through the longevity interventions. Do not experiment without a good advice. And but something that is definitely safe to say, maybe even if let's say you cannot find a longevity physician and you don't know what you could improve already besides of a better lifestyle, at least track yourself, collect your data, because at some point of time, hopefully, and that's also one of my dreams, is that we will have a lot of physicians that will take your data and they will say, look, it's so great that you have it. Let's run it through an algorithm. This is your biological age. This is what we can do. That's the dosage of this and that you have to should take. That's your optimal interval in the intermittent fasting. That's your optimal percentage of aerobic and anaerobic exercises at this specific point of the day. Yalla go, right? So that would be something that I would recommend.
Yeah, and I have to say that nobody of our other 25 or so guests gave this tip, which is great, which is a unique tip. And I think that it's very important because we need to have a baseline. Because if you don't know what is your baseline when you have an issue, that's very hard to know. And that's what we call an experiment of N of one. So I 1% agree with you. Collect your data, store it, and at least to have it. Sometimes you can interpret it. We are at Enthusiast Tracker trying to do it as much as we can. But then when you will have some issues, then your physician or yourself can look at the data and come in and say, hey, that's my baseline and suddenly jump so high. I have an issue and let's treat it. So a great and unique tip. Thank you so much, Evelyne. It was a real pleasure. And I think that it was a fascinating discussion with you. And I really appreciate your time after a very long flight and just landing a few minutes ago. And we look forward to explore the research in the field of longevity each month with you and the leading scientists such as Evelyne. For more information, please go to insidetracker.com/podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to Longevity by Design. Please subscribe to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Longevity by Design is powered by Inside Tracker, a personalized health optimization platform that helps people improve their lives by improving their bodies from the inside out, using personalized, science-backed recommendations for nutrition, supplements, and lifestyle changes. To learn more, visit insidetracker.com/podcast.